What's going on, guys? Day 28 NoFap update, or it might be 29, somewhere around. So Thursday is gonna mark 1 month. I don't keep super close track of the days these days, but I do try to at least have some idea of where I'm at, and I check once in a while, mostly just for reference. But last week I was going through kind of like my difficult stage of this, which is usually around the 3-week mark, and then it usually tends to stabilize after that, which is what has been happening the last few days. But I've definitely noticed more of a calm energy within myself, and I've also noticed that my anxiety seems to be a lot lower. Confidence has been rising, all good things. And I know once it just gets further along, those things are just going to keep improving. So I am just loving life right now. Things are going well. My trip that I took went well over the weekend. I got home at like 3 a.m., but I slept in, so it ended up leveling out. But yeah, it's interesting because the longer that you abstain from this, you start to see things through a more positive lens. And even when maybe something not really bad happens to you, or something really bad, or even just moderately not good, you kind of don't really get thrown off by it as much. And I've had a few things like that happen recently where, if I was seeing things through the negative lens like I was, then I would see it as much more of a threat to my existence or my day. But I just am kind of like, it doesn't really matter that much. And that's kind of what happens when you abstain. But on the flip side of that, if you see things through the negative lens, which tends to happen when you're in the addictive state, then even the smallest things can really throw your day off. And even when something good happens to you, it doesn't seem as good as it normally would. So it's like a snowball effect. These things can really shape your whole life and change things in a positive way if you just keep following the path. So I am going to share a few things today, and one of those things I wanted to talk about is why now is different from many times in the past. And I also want to share a little bit of tough love, because there are some things that I wish that I had heard a little bit earlier, and I think that you guys need to hear it so that you can not make the same mistakes that I made. There may be a little bit of profanity in this video, but sometimes it's necessary to get the point across. So, first of all, probably the biggest reason I would say that things have really shifted this time around is that, as many of you might know, I went through one of the most difficult transitional times of my life a few months ago. And when I say difficult, I mean quite literally, the ground beneath me was there 1 minute and then it was not, is how it kind of felt. Basically, I lost my house due to a natural disaster, and in the midst of that, I also ended up losing the jobs that I had to move back to my hometown, and I also, shortly after, my relationship came to an end. So during that time, it felt kind of like I was Rocky Balboa in the ring, and I had basically gotten punched so hard that I lost consciousness and I couldn't get back up for a moment. And I really didn't know if I was going to ever get back up for a second. luckily it was pretty short-lived when I felt like that, but there was, it was a hard moment in my life. And interestingly, right after that, I really kind of stopped having much of a desire to relapse anymore. And I don't know why that is, but I do think part of it is because I think I just had already gone through so much that I started to realize that this habit that I'd gotten myself into just was not serving me anymore. And I don't know that it ever really was serving me, but at one point in time it felt like it was, I think. But I just started realizing that this was not, there was nothing about it that was positively impacting my life. So it kind of became easier after that. And I've said this many times, but it shouldn't take something like that for you to make that change. But I will say this, I think that you have to look at why you are doing this and what your motivation is. Because if your motivation is simply just to obtain these superpowers, as they call it, then yeah, you might be able to make it short bursts of time, but that is not nearly enough of a strong reason to make this a permanent change for you. And permanent's kind of a strong word, but I think in order to make something even mostly permanent, like basically you almost never slip up again or you never slip up again, you have to have a very strong foundation. But I'm just gonna be honest with you guys, if you don't have that strong foundation, you might be just doing this for the rest of your fucking life, honestly. Because I thought that I had a strong foundation before. I did not have that strong of one, and I carried this out way longer than I would have liked. It could have been worse, but you can always say it could have been worse is the problem with that statement. So the sooner that you realize this, the sooner you can find your motivation that's more long-term, the sooner that you can change the situation. So some examples of my motivation, just so you know kind of like what I mean by this, is one of my motivations is that I don't want to be that version of myself anymore. And that's probably one of the strongest ones, because that version of myself is not one that I am particularly proud of. Now, I don't look at that time in my life and think that everything that I did was not good or that I was a bad person by any means. I was still trying my best with the tools that I had at the time, but when I really looked at it, that's not a person that I really wanted to be. And it took me a while to realize that. And another motivation, though, is that it will negatively impact all of your relationships. And I don't just mean romantic ones. Friendships, family. If you're in the addictive state, even to a moderate level, your dopamine levels are going to be all fucked up, and you're not going to be able to be present in those situations in the same way. Even if you are somewhat present, that slight undercurrent is still going to be there, and it may not seem like it changes anything, but I promise you there is something there that does make a difference. And I've witnessed it many times. It's partially in your head, I think, to an extent, but everything in front of you, to an extent, is in your head. It's real, yes, but the way that we view it and the way we react to it is fully a product of what is in our heads. So that is important. So it's just one of those things where you have to look at that, and you have to also kind of like track yourself. Like, I keep a log of when I have slipped up, so that I can avoid those things in the future. And recently it's become a lot easier to just kind of flip my mind, and I don't have to work quite as hard to do it anymore. I've kind of got my setup that works for me, but it took a while to get to this point, and you guys can get to this point as well. It's not that hard to do. I know that it may seem difficult. It might seem like the most difficult thing you've ever done at times, but if you actually set up your environment correctly and you make sure that your foundation is strong, it's really not that difficult after a while. The beginning is going to feel difficult, but once you kind of get through those roadblocks at the beginning, it's pretty smooth sailing for the most part. So that's kind of just my 2 cents on everything, but I hope that helps you guys, and hopefully you get something out of this advice. But please, if you have any thoughts, leave a comment, and if you have any comments that you appreciate, be sure to like the comment or comment back. I'll update again at the 1 month mark in a few days, so stay tuned.